our relationship with what do we mean when we say strong and independent. I have a love-hate relationship with it. Would I self-describe myself as strong? I don't know, actually. It depends who's sat there.
I think that before, I really thought to be strong, you did have to have quite masculine tendencies. So I remember being very assertive through like university, especially even with men. I'd be very like aggressive and really just don't cross my line.
Because I think the best relationships are greater than the sum of their parts. I think they're really about bringing out the best in each other and about actually you being much more than just, what you could be on your own.
Because the more you get, it's harder to share your life with someone. And I think, how would you advise someone who is in a great position, but now is struggling to open themselves up?
Welcome to the Magnify Conversations. My name's Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And my name's Rachel, and I'm one of the hosts of this podcast.
Magnify is a global community and content platform focused on equipping women like you to grow in and impact your sphere of influence. We truly want to see you thrive in all areas of life and want to display what faith can look like at the centre of that too.
We started the conversations because we wanted to have real discussions about things that matter. Money, relationships, and work, all through the lens of faith and our relationship with God.
Ultimately, we know as multifaceted women, things are rarely one size fits all. So we speak with many different women who are from our community and hear their stories. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Magnify Conversations.
Today, we sat down with Kat Tait to chat about the reality of being a strong woman in a relationship.
Kat is an executive director at a leading US investment bank and a trustee at a non-profit.
We got chatting about the complications that come with being an independent woman in a marriage, leadership in the home, and how we can still embrace our femininity alongside our ambition.
So let's get into the conversation.
Okay, well, we're so excited to have Kat with us on the Magnify Conversations today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. And we have an amazing topic, which I'm really passionate about, that I can't wait to get into, about being a strong, ambitious woman in a relationship. So there's so many dynamics that can play out in a relationship, but especially when the woman is known as the breadwinner or as a more ambitious or strong character. And I think, especially as women of faith, we navigate that a bit differently, potentially. So I'm really interested to see what we talk about, Kat, what you think about this topic. But before we get into it, we have some icebreakers just to warm you up a bit.
Great, let's do it.
Yeah? Okay, so this is a good one. What is your go-to hosting dinner?
Ooh. How many people am I hosting?
Let's say 7.
Yeah.
7, okay. I would say I love to do when I host, and my husband, this drives him absolutely mad, to do like tons of side dishes.
Wow.
So
like what's going to be featured? What's going to be featured?
So I mean, I'm a long time Ottolenghi fan.
Yes.
So anything that kind of like Middle Eastern vibes, lots of tahini everywhere, lots of harissa everywhere. So probably be some sort of like meat, maybe like a slow cooked lamb dish that's kind of been bubbling away in the slow cooker for a while with some mint and cumin, and then like a few different side dishes. Yeah. My mum once completely laughed at me for, I think it was Christmas, and I literally did like a tray of veg per person for like for like all of the different sides that were made up. And she was like, that we're probably not going to eat all of that, right? So I tend to overdo the sides, but I think it's part of like, I love people coming around a table, and we were talking about this earlier, and there just being lots of different things to help yourself to and share. So yes, I would say nice central piece of like meat, and then like lots of different things for people to tap into around the edges.
Who taught you to cook?
Kind of just self did it. Yeah, like my mum and dad are amazing, but like I think they'd be the first to say that cooking is like not something that was a big thing in our house growing up. My grandma used to cook a lot of Chinese food, so I guess I have a little bit of influence from there. My mother-in-law is like hosts a lot, so I guess she's been a big influence for me. And can kind of cater for 20 people kind of, very, at a drop of a hat. So definitely learned a lot from her. But I think a lot of it for me was just, I love people. I love having people over. And so it just kind of became a function of doing that. And I think feeding people is like a big love language of mine. Like, people should never like leave my house hungry. That's like it's my rule.
What would yours be?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love fried chicken. I love frying things because I feel like it's an experiment and it could go really wrong or it could be fantastic. So I love frying anything. Like if you give me a fryer, I'll fry anything. So yeah.
So if you were doing a dinner party for 7, it would definitely, something would be fried.
Yeah, it will be fried.
Yes.
There has to be fried chicken. And then what do I love? I love Spanish foods. I love paella. I love big dishes. Like you're saying, no one should leave the house hungry. But people come with Tupperware these days.
Well,
so they the pressure is on because then you have to cook and for their takeaway. So what about you, Rachel? Do you like?
Oh, I want to come to your house and your house, Sinead. I'm definitely like Mediterranean, Levantine dishes, sharing food, big bowls, salads, sauces, dips.
Sauces is life.
Lemon, salt.
Yeah.
You guys know how much I love salt. I could talk about it all day. Good extra virgin olive oil.
Yes.
So for me, like a table full of food, lots of different things that you can try. Definitely some kind of roasted meat, or that's where it's at for me.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so hungry.
That's right. Me too. Me too. But yeah, that. If you come into my house, that's what you're eating, probably.
Amazing.
So, Kat, as you know, we're having this conversation about being a strong woman in a relationship. And why do you think that's an important conversation to have?
I think the words sort of strong woman can often be quite loaded. And I think there are lots of kind of connotations to that. People can very quickly stereotype women who would be described as strong or perhaps, self-describe themselves as strong. And I think, the notion that of a strong, independent woman often implies that you don't need a man, or I grew up in, as many millennial women did, Destiny's Child, and a lot of those songs that we grew up listening to, which was very much about buying things yourself and not needing a man to kind of do that for you. And I think now that I am married, have been married a long time, I think a lot of those images are perhaps actually just not super helpful for how we should think about like being in a relationship, being strong and doing independent things, but within the context of a relationship. And I think that I'm really keen to be part of, I guess, redefining that and thinking about how we can have a healthier image and vision for what it looks like to be a strong woman of faith. And I think more personally as well, there's definitely been points for a lot of friends of mine and I think for myself personally where you hit a point like having kids or going through a season change, and even if you have been seen outwardly as a sort of strong, independent woman, you almost sort of hit a bit of an identity crisis. And I think that is also something that I think people go through quite silently. So I think having a space to talk about that really honestly, and hopefully, we can sort of talk about different ways of approaching that and narrowing down into kind of actually what our faith kind of says about that, I think is really important to me as well.
Yeah, I love what you said about redefining what strong and independent looks like.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know for both of you, I mean, before you got married, did you see yourself as independent just because you were single, or did you see yourself as independent because the world told you to be that way? And I think about that girl beforehand, I did subscribe to the whole, I don't need nobody. Like I remember going in the underground and holding like 3 suitcases by myself and like bringing them all up to the top of the stairs alone and looking back
Why do we do that?
Yeah, like things like that. That's what it means. That's what I literally thought when I got to the top of the stairs. I don't need a man to carry bags for me. But what was it like before you got married? How did you see yourself? And how have those messages sort of translated down, going towards marriage for both of you?
I was quite young when I got married. I was 25.
Yeah.
So then I'd met my now husband quite a couple, 2-3 years before. I think similar to you, Kat, you got married like relatively young. But yeah, even at that young age, we're millennials. That's the message we've grown up with is Spice Girls, girl power, Destiny's Child, Survivor. That's where we are, isn't it? So I think I'd see myself as being, was I financially independent? I still lived at my parents' house, so I don't know if that counts. But I did view myself as being like, I can do this myself. I like to do things by myself. I travelled alone. So I felt quite confident in myself. And I don't really think that changed much going into marriage, which maybe is a bit of a problem initially. And I think what you were saying, Kat, about our relationship with what do we mean when we say strong and independent, I have a love-hate relationship with it. Would I describe myself as strong? I don't know, actually. It depends who's sat there. Because it depends, for me, that has so many attachments to it, some that I wouldn't want to associate with.
I agree.
Yeah. I think that before, I really thought to be strong, you did have to have quite masculine tendencies. So I remember being very assertive through like university, especially even with men. I'd be very like aggressive and really just don't cross my line. Like this is, and just really taking on like this, like you can't mess with me type of attitude. And then I'd be a completely different person at home because.
So do you feel that's in your personality though, to be like that?
I think I tend to emulate a character of what I think I should be at that time.
Okay.
So I'm a single woman. I should be this way. I'm engaged. Should I be dainty? Should I act like I can't walk properly without a man on my... I just sort of used to emulate things. It wasn't until I studied marriage and started to read about the idea that you're a team or the man should lead. Even the concept of a man leading... Even though my father was the head of my house, the actual idea that someone would lead me was really hard for me to swallow for a while because I hadn't really met anyone who I could trust to lead. So I took on just characters until I actually had to have those real conversations with myself that if you want to be in a relationship and follow or trust somebody to lead it, you have to pick well.
Yeah.
You have to decide to start to understand how you become the star player, but not the captain all the time. Because I like to say that my mum used to always say, you're a team, me and your dad are a team.
Right.
And my mum used to say, but the captain isn't always the best player. And I think, yes, I'm the Ronaldo, and he could be Alex Ferguson, but I'm Ronaldo. And I could accept, that's how I accepted it, really.
Right.
I just wanted a plot that I could be myself.
Totally.
You know, I wanted to be involved. I didn't want someone to tell me what to do, and I couldn't be the fullness of myself. I think that's what a lot of women struggle with, maybe just wanting to be their full selves and not having to chip away at themselves. I don't know whether you felt that maybe you had to alter or thought that marriage might cause you to have to alter yourself in any way, or have you seen that in anyone? Yeah.
Definitely seen it in certain marriages. I think for me personally, and similar story to you, like my husband and I have like known each other since we were 15. We started dating at 18. We got married at 22. So we were very young when we got together, and I think we've almost like grown into adults together, I think. And I suppose that's, and we've had a huge influence, I suppose, over each other and grown together in that way. I think what you were saying before about trust and trusting, your partner and being aligned both in terms of like the big picture things, but also trusting them to want the best for you and to be supportive and for you, as opposed to just sort of out for themselves and, you're kind of fighting these individual sort of lives. I think, that is not the vision of marriage, I don't think. And I think actually, the vision certainly of a Christian marriage is, this very sacrificial relationship where you're, giving to each other and giving for each other. And I think, but that comes down to trusting your partner and them enabling you to not only be more yourself, but actually become each day more who God has made you to be and step into those things that He is calling you into.
I think when you say trust, though, there's areas of trust. So I perhaps trust you with my body, but with my finances, that can be quite daunting for someone. I don't know, Rachel, if you feel there's areas that you could say, I could trust my spouse with that, but it took me a while to trust them in something else, Yeah,
and I think over time, for me anyway, and I don't know about you both, over time you realise, I thought I trusted them with that, but actually my actions and my behaviour right now are showing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And so that not necessarily for me hasn't necessarily been finance, but in other areas I've thought, I'm saying that I trust you with everything and we're a team and all of that stuff. But actually my mindset and my behaviour is saying the exact opposite. And so I think that's a journey of growth as well, isn't it? And it's interesting, Kat, you were saying you met your husband when you were young, you got married quite young. So you've kind of grown up beside each other. So were you like studying when you met? Were you, not when you met, but like when you got married, I assume like you're starting out in your career? Because I just think the whole rhetoric as well of like, especially women now, especially women our age in their 30s are looking for someone, and rightly so, they want somebody established.
Yeah.
But the list can just be as long as your arm. You've met your husband in a life season where everything's to play for, like the potential's to be actualized in many ways.
Absolutely.
What was that like? Because did you just meet and it's kind of like you fell in love? Did you have a list as long as your arm? You know,
it's a good question. I think we were friends obviously for a few years before we got together, and I think I was at that point still working out a lot of stuff in my faith. So I actually, I saw my husband as like this really amazing, like strong Christian guy. And, I thought he was really funny and smart. And, I really liked him quite early on. But I think because I was still working quite a few things out, like it wasn't the right time for us to get together. And so it really was, a few years later before we then, I suppose, took things to the next level. And then, so he'd just gone to university. I was doing a gap year. So while we'd grown up in sort of the same town, we're going to the same church at home and lived like 10 minutes walk from each other's house, we decided, very deliberately to go to university in like very different places. While he was at university, he did, a semester in the US. So, that was obviously kind of long distance, to an even greater extreme. And I think that was really good for us. I think it was really good for us to, even though we'd got married really young, like we were having to kind of very regularly make the decision to stay together when, a lot of people who, get together at school, like they might break up when they're at university and be like, oh, I want to go and see, what else is out there, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I suppose we were making quite a deliberate choice to still be together. And then in our sort of just before our final year, so it's just after he got back from the US, we got engaged. And I think actually, him being away in the US really, because it's difficult being apart for sort of, he was away for 6 months, but I went out halfway through, and we just had a wonderful time together. And I think it really solidified for us that actually, no, we did really want to be together. And so he proposed shortly after he got back from that, and then kind of the rest is history. But I think even when I look across like the earlier years of our marriage, like in our 20s, we were very conscious that we had got married very young. A lot of our friends that were like not from church just thought we were totally mad. And I think, but we made quite deliberate decisions not to just be a little kind of, I don't know, hermit couple that like got married young. And, sometimes you hear these stories of like, oh, they got married and I never saw them again. Yeah. And, we really, really didn't want to be like that. And part of that's just our personalities, a bit super extroverted. We like love being around people and we share that very deeply. But, we made some quite unconventional decisions, I think, in our 20s. So he works in the energy sector, and a lot of those jobs are in quite far-flung, sort of less glamorous places. And my job working in the investment industry was very much in London or New York or wherever. So for me, my career was always going to be London. Right. But for him to get the experience that he wanted to get in order to kind of pursue further levels of his career, particularly because, we were at a stage where, we were pre-kids, we were like, hey, let's go all in before we kind of, think about having to perhaps start it down a little bit more when we have a family. So we made the decision that he would do some of these sort of more rotational placements and kind of spend significant periods away. So, he spent a few years in Azerbaijan. And
you were in the
so he would go to Azerbaijan for 3 to 4 weeks at a time, be working out there, and then come back for 3 to 4 weeks and be completely off. So it was a very weird kind of rhythm of life, because he had like 6 months of the year where he was like away, but then 6 months of the year where he was just at home, like without, he didn't have to work, he was just on holiday. And I was still working like a normal person.
How was that for you though? 'Cause I'd find that really difficult.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, if I'm working every day and my spouse has a different line of work or different routine. How was that for you?
It was definitely an adjustment.
Yeah.
Were you like irritated by the fact that he was there, or were you frustrated because you couldn't like be off with him at the same time, just being in a completely different line
I think I had a whole range of feelings at various different points of that. There were definitely points where I was like, this is great. I just give him a list in the morning and then he's got it done by the afternoon and it's excellent. It's like I've got a PA. And then there were times where I was just like super bummed that I had to go to work and that he was at home and able to have a really fun day doing whatever he was doing. But I think, what we really tried to do is not just kind of make that season something we had to get through, but really something that was an opportunity for us to actually flourish and grow. And I think a lot of people had said to us, you shouldn't do it because, and I think, there is a justifiable warning in that, because I think if you look at a lot of the people that have gone into those types of situations, the stats on the state of marriages that come out of those are not good. And we were very conscious of that, but I think we were very intentional about doing things, making it work and doing it in a way that we could flourish. So I ended up going out to Azerbaijan quite a lot for the weekend, which my work colleagues thought was hilarious. And I absolutely loved it. I got to meet his colleagues, I got to experience a very different culture and understand his work differently. And we just had a lot of fun. And when he was back in his weeks off, and I was doing a lot of travel for work, thankfully to slightly more glamorous places, he would just come with me, and we would book him the cheapest flight on the plane to kind of come to wherever it is that we were going to, and we just had so much fun, and we traveled a lot. We had a huge, with so many rich experiences out of that time, and we also just really prioritized things that were important to us. So while we were very protective of our time in many ways when he was back, because obviously, that was our special time to kind of reconnect and be together, we are both very social people. So we would almost always host a big party. And that was that became something that we were sort of known for. And we plowed a lot of effort into that, whether that was a particular theme or just, something else. And I think that's where a lot of our love of hospitality also came in as well. So I think a lot of people sort of looked, I guess, from outside and probably just thought why are they doing that? That's a very strange kind of decision. But I think because we got married so young and we had a very, I think, strong foundation within our marriage, we were able to then, from that place, enable each other and push each other actually to kind of pursue more things independently. But still obviously prioritize that time when we did come back together to ensure that strong bond was still strong.
Yeah. So interesting, because what I'm hearing really is someone who's willing to compromise, and hearing your foundations, your core beliefs, jointly, your joint view of what marriage should be, really sort of flourishing in your marriage. But for, I think, so many people, that is attacked so much. The foundation is attacked, and then the willingness to compromise is very, very few people are willing to do those sort of things. And was it your faith that helped you guys really ground yourselves? Because right now I think a lot of people struggle with those two things, having that foundation and then also saying, I'm willing to compromise, I'm willing to support you in different seasons and move around. Because I'd be like, I'm in the UK, God has called me to the UK, you can go to, anywhere, but I'm not leaving. But then that's where sometimes it can create problems. And I just wonder, what were the beliefs that were driving you to say, I'm going to compromise, at that time?
Yeah, I think it's our faith for both of us is absolutely fundamental, and I think is the bedrock of every decision we make. I think I remember when we were deciding whether or not he should go and take this job and do this crazy thing, there's a little flower garden within the park near where we live, and we just went there and we just prayed about it. And I think, and that's become a little spot for us. So we often go back and we're making a big decision and we're okay, let's go to the flower garden and pray. And I think we both got a real sense that actually it was something that we could do and that something that was right for us. And And I think that's one of the things that we've really like learned over the years is that actually we don't have to follow the conventional, this is the right way. Yeah. Like God has made us all individually. He is, this ultimate craftsman and designer, and we live within his sovereign plan. And so when he opens doors for us, like we can trust him to walk through those as long as we do that, prayerfully and purposefully. So I think we are incredibly intentional. We live like life at 100 miles an hour, and we love that, and we're both very go, go, go. But I think what enables that is that we spend a lot of time taking a step back, thinking, being intentional about the decisions we make. We've spent a lot of time thinking about our why as a couple. Right. And, this is something we've done more recently, so it wouldn't have been kind of, I guess, a part of the decisions that we made around him doing the rotation programs. But it's something that I think now enables us to make those decisions in a much more kind of faith, within a faith framework that I think helps us have much more confidence. But I think going back to that specific example with Azerbaijan, I think what also enabled me to compromise and enable him to do that and, take the various sacrifices. There were times where he was away for my birthday, he was away for Christmas, because that's just how things line up. You don't just get to choose the days you get off. But he always made it incredibly clear that, if at any point ever it was too much, he would quit. And I think, again, that comes down to, his identity in his job was not in his job. It was in, his identity in God and in his faith. And I think the same for me. So actually, we were making these decisions and pursuing things, but ultimately, if there were fundamental things that were being eroded because of those decisions, we're fine to walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Sinead, one of your co-hosts.
We know so many of you already watch these conversations, so if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, hit the button now. It really helps this important content to reach even more women around the world and ensures we can keep bringing these conversations to you.
Let's get back into this episode.
I was going to say, I think now as well, and I don't know if you both find this, but with perhaps friendships who are people who are single, they're looking to settle down. We were saying earlier about the list as long as you're out. And I get that, but I'm not throwing shade on that. I understand that totally. I think sometimes perhaps when we're a bit younger and have grown together, you've kind of made some big decisions and maybe a bit more gracious as well. But coming to work as well as being an identity, and that's something we want to talk about today as well. It's also when women are the breadwinner in the relationship, the power dynamics around that and how that works. Now, obviously, Kat, your perspective is very much from what you said, you share everything, you're a team, you're working together, you're growing together. And I know you might hate this phrase, but you are the quote unquote breadwinner in your household. Has that had an effect on your marriage? How does that play out? What is other people's response to that, if they know that? Have you ever, thinking about being the strong, independent woman, for want of a better phrase, have you been misunderstood because of that? Let's talk about that, because
so
for me, there is so much in it, and we've got so much time to talk about it.
Where to start? I suppose our context obviously is that we did get together, as you say, so young. And so, I didn't know that I was going to be the breadwinner when we first got together. But, obviously that ended up being the case, almost from the outset. And it's just not really been an issue for us. I think, we took our marriage vows at face value. All I have, I share with you.
Right.
We took that very literally. And so, what does that mean practically? It means, we pool everything, we get paid into the same account, we pay out of everything in the same account, we share savings, credit cards, whatever it is. And, if one of us gets a bonus, we decide together how, we see it as ours. And we just, we see together how we're going to spend it. And I think, or use it. And I think, I think that notion of collective like ownership over something is like really important, because then it's not about like, you know, mine versus his, or, you know, keeping score, or, you know, I guess that sort of separation element. But I think you get to really come together in a partnership and really decide how to steward your wealth together. And I think that's a really exciting thing to do. So I think for us, you know, when we were a few years in, you know, we'd bought a sort of 2-bed flat in London, where we, you know, the area that we loved, near a lot of our community and our church. And we hit a point where we were sort of like, how much do we really need? Like, you know, we were in a very comfortable position where, you know, we, within a few years, could have had a very low mortgage and would have given us a huge amount of freedom to go and, you know, do whatever it is that we wanted to do, which, and, you know, we sort of recognize, you know, a lot of our friends who are, you know, even a life stage ahead of us, like we've got more space than them, and, you know, how much do we really need? And I think, you know, we did wrestle with that. And I think where we came out, and, you know, we talked to a lot of people, we prayed a lot about it, but I think what really struck us was that actually we both have a real heart and, I think, capacity for hospitality. And I think particularly in central London, where obviously is very expensive and people don't have space, my high earning could actually open a lot of doors in terms of us buying a bigger space and having that that capacity to really use that and it kind of expand that. So I think we actually saw my high earning at that point as actually something that was very intentional and actually quite missional.
Right. As it was an opportunity to do things aligned with your values, rather than just how do we become more comfortable, how do we lower our mortgage, right?
Exactly. And, you know, there's been kind of subsequent examples like since then of like, you know, where actually, again, it's, you know, there's no point just earning money for the sake of it. It's like there's got to be you know, money without purpose has no value. It's something someone said to me once, which I thought was really, really true. And so I think we've always been very thoughtful about, you know, and we feel incredibly blessed that God has like given us the capacity to earn well and build assets from a very early stage, just by the function that we've got married very early. And so, you know, we take that really seriously, and we are very intentional, and we have conversations regularly about, you know, what we're spending, saving, investing, giving away, and how we do that. And I think, as I said, you know, I think it's actually a really rich experience to be able to do that together, and as our kids grow up, to kind of include them in that as well.
I think it's so inspiring to hear the we in your decision making, but I'm also thinking about the people who get into a relationship much later in life.
Yeah.
And I have so many friends who they make you know, good money, to be honest, but they are so afraid to share that with someone. So they already have a plan, right, to go into a relationship where, well, I've built this for myself. And I've heard a quote that was like, it's sometimes better to marry when you are young, because the more you get, it's harder to share your life with someone. And I think, how would you advise someone who is in a great position, but now is struggling to open themselves up to sharing? I mean, I don't like sharing.
Just in general.
I don't like sharing,
I have a 3-year-old. I'm trying to teach him how to share. It's like, it's a challenge.
Yes, I just think, wow, like, I mean, thank goodness I'm not a billionaire, and I met my husband before that. But I think if I won the lottery, it's like Michelle Obama saying, no, we're president. I'd be like, no, I won the lottery. I'm president, you know. How do we stop that mentality, especially as women of faith, of saying, it's come to me, and maybe God has actually blessed me, and I'm the one that should be the president over these finances. How do you drop that mentality and submit that to not just God, but to share with another person? How do you do that practically?
Yeah, I think the vision of like Christian marriage that is, you know, presented in the Bible is really around, you know, it's becoming one flesh. It's about, you know, a man leaves his mother and father to be joined with his wife, and there's this real sense that, you know, you leave something to come together and become a separate unit. And I think for us, you know, the last couple of years, we've really tried to drill down into like, what does that mean? And I think this is what's helpful for perhaps people that get together later in life, and as you say, have those like very independent ecosystems already set up, and ideas and dreams and plans, and all of those often good things. But Alex and I spent a lot of time working out, and you can blame like Simon Sinek, the start with why leadership consultant on this. But we really did spend time thinking about like what is our why as a couple, and subsequently as a family. Now, as Christians, our main why is to glorify God, right? Like that is where we are. And actually, I think where we are in this cultural moment, that's actually just a very important starting point, because I think culturally there's this very strong narrative around living for yourself, self-fulfillment, and
even in marriage, I think as well.
Yeah.
So not even just as a single person, but in your marriage still living for yourself. Yeah, like every so often do what the other person wants to do, or every so often submit to them. But I think that just to add on to what you're saying, the vision of marriage from the Christian perspective is actually it's mutual submission.
Exactly.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's very hard.
Yes. And I think it comes exactly, and so that like what the Christian narrative says is actually, life is about living for God. It is about like living within his sovereign plan. I think, I often say to friends of mine that like don't have faith, that are like, grappling with, purpose and like trying to work that out and like plan for lives. I'm like, oh man, like that is way above my pay grade. Like you are stressing yourself out over that. But trusting like in God's plan for your life. And I think, so I guess if we start with that as our like kind of main why, and it's like, if we believe that God is the ultimate designer, that he has given us all individual like gifts and talents, we live within his sovereign plan where there are like certain doors that are, open for us individually and collectively as couples or family. And by the way, that is like the privilege of choice that we have in this particular like moment, both kind of in history but also globally, to have so much choice is an incredible privilege, and one that I think we as a generation should not take lightly. But the reality is we do have a lot more choice to pursue the things that we want to, or that we can in aligning with the things that we feel gifted and play to our strengths. But yeah, so we started with that bigger why, and then we kind of like drilled down into, okay, so what does that mean for Kat and Alex in 2021 or 2024 or whatever it is? And we really drilled that down into two main things. And the first thing of that was being family to those around us, and what that really means is hospitality, and how do we come around people, particularly in places like London, which are often quite isolating for people and lonely for people. People often don't have family, or come to study, or it's a very transitional place. So how do we create pillars of like community that are long-standing? And then the second thing is really around leading and supporting and encouraging big ideas. Like we love when people have big visions. We love when people want to do something crazy and different. And so, we feel very passionately about using, our time, our energy, but also like our money and our various kind of networks and connections in terms of like getting behind these people and like helping them do amazing things. So those two things kind of have, I suppose, become what we feel is the sort of the how we glorify God in our day-to-day, given our giftings and the doors that are open to us and the things that, contextually make our life what it is. And so what that means is that like every time we have to make a decision, or every time that we, something kind of comes up, or, someone asks for our time to do something, we can look at it through that lens, and we can assess actually very quickly, like, does this fit? And, we do that on a regular basis anyway. Like, is the way that we're spending our time, our money, our resource, like, is that reflecting kind of what we feel we are about as a couple and as a family? And I think the beauty of it is that it should evolve over time, right? Like, and as our kids grow, like, and we understand and learn more, they're only 3 and 1 and at the moment, but, as they grow and we learn more about their character and what they love and their strengths, that will feed in and evolve what we are as a family, and it will be something that as a family we can grow in, and like will align us and give us, I think, purpose and vision and excitement about doing life together. So I think my encouragement for people that perhaps do get together later in life and already have quite established systems is like, spend that time like working out your collective vision of like, how actually your different gifts and talents and opportunity sets like come together, and how God might be wanting to use those things together. Because I think the best relationships are greater than the sum of their parts. I think they're really about bringing out the best in each other, and about actually you being much more than just, what you could be on your own. Like, I know with my husband, like, I have like 100 ideas a minute, and like he's like drives him crazy. But and like but I know that if he says like, actually that one has legs, I know that like he is gonna like get behind me, he's gonna like make me stronger. And I think one of the illustrations I often like to think about is, if you think about like boxing and, in a boxing ring, like boxing's an individual sport, but actually in order to become a good boxer, there's only so much you're going to get to, like, punching at a punch bag, right? Like, what you need is you need a sparring partner. You need somebody that's gonna like know you, that knows your strengths, that knows like your weaknesses, that knows what you're coming up against, knows where you need to improve. And even though it like looks like fighting, actually it's really about like making that person stronger and preparing them for what is coming ahead. And, and I bet that person is then like front row when they are coming up against like an opponent, cheering you on. They're the one that, comes straight away to celebrate if you win or to commiserate if you get completely beaten up. And I think, that's how we see our marriage, is that there's a lot of things we do together, but where we do things kind of independently, we are like, we're sparring partners, and we like really want to like build and encourage each other. So so I'd say the best relationships are more than the sum of their parts. And I don't want to think about like relationship dynamics as like a zero-sum game where you're like kind of fighting and like, going back to like my 100 ideas a minute, like, I shouldn't be like, oh, how many ideas can I get through this time, like with him? It's really around actually, thinking about, okay, the ideas that do get through, they're going to be the ones that are worth pursuing. And we're going to do that in a much more powerful way together than if I just like try and run off in this direction and do all of them.
I think also you're sort of talking a lot about this partnership and you feeding my ideas and feeding this part of me. But I think about the Christian even journey and how sometimes someone might be more ahead. I think you mentioned that your husband was sort of in church and you were sort of figuring things out. But sometimes you often find a lot of women are really into their faith and really going for it, like ambitiously with God, and, I'm going to like go on a missions trip, and the guy's barely sort of praying or barely even thinking about those things. And I sort of read in this book about boundaries and dating how there can be like a parent-child dynamic. And sometimes the child can resent the parent because we're supposed to be equals, but the parent one, or the one who's more advanced in the faith or in their career, is patronizing the other person. And, just ways of keeping your heart open. Because I've been in that situation where I was the main, I'm the captain and I'm moving forward in this direction. Join me on my voyage if you like. And I did sense resentment. I was dating the person, so they weren't my husband, but I started to sense resentment because I felt like I was doing all the work and I was pushing this thing forward and I was making deposits and the other person was withdrawing constantly. And I think I made a decision that if I was to get married, I can't be in that position again. Some people do a complete 180 and say, well, I'm not going to be in a partnership in that way. How do we not let that resentment build up when someone is advancing and all their prayers are getting answered, and it seems like, they're the star player in our relationship? How do we not let that resentment build up? Because it can be challenging. It can be challenging if you have a successful wife and you're not seen as necessarily, your part is not seen. That quote, behind every successful man is a strong woman. I think these days it's like behind every successful
it
woman.
can be the other way around.
Absolutely.
There's a strong man, and I know that because my husband supports me so much, but people don't necessarily see that. How can we maintain that peace in our homes when there is outwardly someone who is the breadwinner or the star or shining the brightest? You know, how can we keep that peace at home above what's going on outside?
I think it's it's coming back to what you were saying, Kat. For me, it's the foundation that things are built on again, and how your values inform your relationship. Because there's always going to be external factors, whether that's how much you're earning or what's going well for one half of the couple. And of course, again, if you see in marriage as being one, but just being honest, like there are certain times where things feel like they're going really well for you or for maybe your husband. And I'm not necessarily saying there's envy in that, but you feel frustrated with your own situation sometimes. But again, I think it comes down to the foundation that you were saying, Kat, is what's your way? What are we building this on? If we're a team, you've got to be a team. If you play team sport, you've got to be a team when you don't want to be a team. And when you've watched somebody play a team sport and they've just decided either they're the star or they're not really going to pull the weight anymore because it's not going the way they thought, that's when it goes downhill.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking even of football where if someone scores a goal, the goalkeeper doesn't go, oh, I should have scored that goal. They're like, everyone is rejoicing equally. And I think that is the thing, that team mentality is something we have to really take on. But it's hard to, sometimes you have to switch it on.
Totally.
You have to switch it on. You have to, like you said, you made a decision. You have to switch on that. I'm part of the team. It's not me versus him or I'm me versus the world. It's us versus the world. So
but I think practically that's not having that mentality is where it comes to, you were saying about friendships or relationships where, okay, I've got my own ecosystem. Like I've made what I've made. I've got what I've got. You've made what you've made. You've got what you've got. And especially when it comes to money, I think if you're kind of starting on that foot, the chances are there are going to be more and more and more things like that where this is mine, that's yours. Where do you actually come together in the middle of that and build something together in terms of your marriage and relationship? Because I think it can seem, it's just money, it's just one aspect, like we share everything else. Or it's just this part of our lives that's separate. But actually, that's almost like a little crack in plaster. It's kind of fine. You know, if you've ever lived in a new house or you've had plastering done in your house, why is it? I mean, I don't know why that happens, but like the floor moves or it subsides or whatever. I should know this. And you start to see a crack. It's almost like starting with that crack already there and that lack of alignment. I think, and even though I think there can be a real power dynamic, you're saying you are the higher earner in your relationship, but because of the foundation it's built on, there's some kind of security there because it's like we share everything. We make our decisions together, we pray together, all of these things. That's not the case for everyone. And I think that's where there can be an unhelpful power dynamic, either male or female, there can almost be a hold over the other person in the relationship. As in, I'm the higher earner, so really, I call the shots with what happens, with whether we spend, save, or invest. I think that can be quite rocky ground.
Yeah, I think it's that mentality of we're stewards over what we have. As believers, we're not, God didn't give me, I mean, every time I get some money, I always hear this voice say, it's God, like God gives you the power to gain wealth. Right. So even the power to spend it, God is the one that brings it to me. So I think that stewardship of we don't own any of this, we are stewards over this.
Yeah, it's all God's.
These things, it all belongs to Him. And we will have to give an account for what we've done with these things. So if I do go and buy some Gucci shoes and I didn't tell my husband, I hid that from my husband, is that stewardship? Is that us thinking about the foundation, about our shared vision? So I definitely think that stewardship encourages me to think twice about how I'm spending things or how I'm making decisions. And I think ultimately, if I chose to share my life with this person, why are you here? Like, why are you actually here? Are you here to just make me feel good sometimes? Or are you here to help me make decisions? And two are better than one. So many issues and problems I've had when we first got married, they were instantly shared, instantly relieved. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the benefit of having someone in my room all the time. At first it was awkward, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, I I could just wake you up and say, "This. What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And I've loved that ability to take my thoughts and share them with somebody else, because that can be overwhelming. The world is challenging. You know, we go through a lot of things, and being able to share that with someone, they can stand with you in prayer, they can stand with you in so many things, is just amazing. Is amazing, but that foundation is so important. You know,
and being able to have those really open, honest, candid conversations
exactly.
where you can just be honest and be like, I'm really struggling with this, or like, actually, I found that really hard. And I think being able to be open and honest, and then from that place of trust, I think, you know, work out how you can move forward together, I think is really important.
I wondered you know, when you were saying about we could now choose to live comfortably, and I realised just because of your marriage and your disposition as a couple, you've decided we're going to do things together. We're not going to have that power dynamic, like we share everything we have. It doesn't matter who's earning more, or if someone's doing really well or someone's struggling, like we're a team, we're one. We take the hits, we take the highs together. What triggered that conversation of, do we live comfortably or don't we? Because I don't think that's that normal.
Easy. Yeah, it's like you guys are selfless.
No, and I say that with the utmost respect. I think for all of us, whether we're Christian or not, we kind of see an opportunity to live more comfortably and go, how do we make that happen? So what triggered that conversation of, we could actually use what we've got to build community and family and go with those values that you really have together?
I'm not really sure. I think it was, you know, we really always just tried to have like a posture of gratefulness and like gratitude. And so I think we did recognize very early on, like, just how profoundly like blessed and fortunate we were to, you know, bought a place very early and to have more space than a lot of people that were around us. And I think spending time, you know, with a very broad range of people, I think is important for kind of keeping you grounded. I think if you just sort of stay in a sort of, you know, rich bubble, then it's always, you know, you're always thinking about what you don't have and what you could, you know, how much more you could have. So I think making sure you are living within that sort of context, I think is helpful. But I think, you know, it wasn't entirely selfless, because I think some of it was like, well, we could have more freedom to do whatever we want, right? And so, you know, I remember somebody, a very well-meaning a pastor when I was at university, when he found out that I was, you know, going to go and work for a US investment bank after I graduated, and you know, this is tail end of the financial crisis, right? So it's like everyone hates the bankers. And you know, he was like, why wouldn't you use your talents to go and do something more meaningful with your life? And you know, and I think that's still like, in some ways, like an underlying question I have.
Really?
Not
even after
like,
what you said.
So I think that's why it's important to kind of talk about like purpose a lot, because actually it's like, you know, why am I doing what I'm doing? And you know, rather than like, you know, going to work for an NGO or whatever, and I'm definitely not patient enough to like work in the third sector, so that's definitely one thing. But I think it's good to ask you yourself those kinds of questions constantly, and you know, if we are, you know, living for God, like, you know, what does that look like, and making sure you're still like on that path, and being very conscious of that every day.
Even when you're asking those questions for yourself, where do you often look for you, Kat, to find these answers? So where do you look in the Bible to inform your decisions as a wife, as a woman? Do you think that the Bible has a lot to say about femininity, and when you're an independent woman? You know, we all love the Proverbs 31 woman.
I was just going to say Proverbs 31.
I logged out when she said something about sewing. I was like, that's not like, I log out. I want to be like, I'm like Paul of Tarsus, like, no. So I think where have you looked in the Bible to see versions of femininity, of strength, of being a wife? You know, where have you looked into that?
I mean, I think Proverbs 31 is like, you know, it's the one everyone knows, but I think there's a reason for that, right? And I think, you know, even thinking about the title for this episode, you know, being around strength, it's like, you know, if you look at verse 17, it's literally about like, you know, she's dressed in strength. And like, I think that's such a beautiful image. So, and I think there's such a range of different things that, you know, she does and that she emulates. You know, she provides for her family. She, you know, plants, you know, considers a field and buys it. She the fruit of her hand, she plants a vineyard, but, she also is providing for the poor and, there's so much in there. And I think, that to me is like a real, it's intimidating, but it's an encouragement as well that like actually what's often a very narrow view of what like being a woman is or being, a woman in a relationship is actually like, that's not biblical. Like the biblical vision of like what a noble wife, like, wife of noble character, or, I think in other translation, it's like a woman who fears the Lord is incredibly broad. And the other part of that verse I particularly like is verse 25, it talks again about being clothed in strength, but also, that she laughs at the days to come. And I love that because it's like she's not anxious. Like she's not living like, in this kind of constant like place of anxiety, but she's really confident. She doesn't take herself seriously. Like, she's just, sounds like she's just in a really healthy place and loves life. And I think that is just as important as well in terms of as a posture of life. And, she clearly just trusts God with her life and with her family's life, but has also done all this stuff and, is clearly very active. She's not passive at all. So, I love that, that section of the Bible. But there are so many other examples, whether it's, Lydia or Phoebe or like Mary Magdalene or, Deborah or Esther. Like there are so many women in the Bible who, demonstrate strength and making difficult decisions or being, very courageous in whatever it is that their stories, context is. So I think that's there's a lot there, and if you just look at how Jesus celebrates women as well, it's like he did it to the point of like cultural like offense. And I love that. So I think there's a lot in there to give us encouragement as women.
Definitely.
Yeah. We, as the Magnify community, we love to do something on the conversations, which are our audience dilemmas. So we have people, women from our community that will write in, ask questions that we can ask guests that we speak with around the topic. So the first one I want to ask you, Kat, is this. This person said, I'm starting to feel like I have to dull myself down so that guys don't feel intimidated. What would be your advice for someone in my situation who wants to find a guy who isn't scared of a woman who has drive and knows what she wants?
Oh, so hard, but don't do it. Don't dumb yourself down. Like, I think relationships should be about enabling you to be like more of who God like calls you to be, not less. And I know for, people like if you are like later on in life and, you are like looking for that life partner, it's like, it could be so tempting to try and, alter yourself in order to kind of like meet whatever, you sort of feel like is what people want. But actually, like, I just think for a long term, like healthy marriage, like choosing someone that, or, being with somebody that like, not only like accepts and, you for your strengths and, who you are, but actually like embraces it and encourages it and to see it grow. Like, I just think that is, like, that's so important. So, but it's so hard. So
I was going to say, otherwise you would, when things settle down, maybe you get married or you stay with them a long time, the real you is always going to come out. It's like, try and shove it into a box. But eventually, I think, especially as you become more established in a relationship, you feel more comfortable. You're almost fighting the way
yourself.
God's made you and your nature and the things that actually should be strengthened and celebrated.
I think
that's good.
With that as well, it's big because I'm a big extrovert. So I think sometimes we always get told, don't calm down, don't change. But I think you also have to understand what you're getting into in a marriage. So again, I don't like sharing. Marriage is for sharing. So I think sometimes you have to ask yourself the hard questions that I do want to bring someone in, but am I prepared to have a shared vision? Am I prepared to share my life, trust God with this person? So I think a lot of us sometimes, especially, I'll just blame it on myself, but like with main character syndrome, are like, oh, I want this. But really, when you come together as one, you have to submit that to God again. And you have to lay that down again and say, okay, God, what do you want us to do? Now, even God, when he made us, he said, let us make man in our own image. So he was already showing that there's a relationship going on here. So I think even as a strong, like, extroverted person, I had to really think about not just being myself, but also saying, will I, agree and find agreement with somebody if it came down to you can't do do something? Are you ready to agree? I wouldn't say submit because there's so much with that word, but I would say, are you ready to agree, as well with that person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really helpful. And then we've got another one. And so someone else has written in and said, I've recently become a mom and I haven't made it a secret that I'm looking forward to going back to work soon. And my husband really supports me, but the judgment I've got from other people makes me feel guilty. Is this something you've experienced and how did you handle it, if so?
I think for women who perhaps don't earn as much, there can be very economic rationale for giving up work when you have children or for going down like to less days or whatever it is, because actually childcare is just so expensive that actually it makes financial sense. But like for me, it would be like materially financially negative if I was to give up work for our family, right?
Yeah.
And like so the choice just looks different.
Do you feel pressure? Did you feel pressure with that though?
I think I feel very grateful because I really enjoy working. I think I'm similar to this audience member, and I really like working, and I feel like I am in miraculously in a role where I do get a really good amount of time with my kids. So it hasn't for me been as much of a tension, but I can totally see how it would be for a lot of kind of more high-earning women. In terms of like the sort of the judgment piece of the question, like I lose count of the number of people who kind of sort of, had certain reactions to, me going, like me not taking a full year of maternity leave, me, wanting to go back to work, me even, doing a fair amount of like kind of keep in touch days while I was on maternity leave.
Where was that coming from? Like peers or family?
Is it generational? Is it?
No, I think it's from everywhere. Like, and I think, and a lot of it, and I think a lot of it's not like, it's not intentional or malicious.
Okay,
it's just, I think there's just there's certain cultural expectations or whatever it is. So, I definitely resonate with that experience. But I think then it just, again, it comes down to like, being secure in your own identity, like actually knowing that, God has like opened certain doors for me, and you make decisions in faith in your own way and prayerfully in a way that is right for your family. And it's hard though. Like I think you just have to have confidence in your own decisions and then just get on with it.
Yeah.
And
then just lastly, how can we support you as the Magnify community, or where can we find you?
So I'm not super like out there in the world, but I love to entertain. So if you want kind of entertaining kind of fun stuff, then I'm on Canopy Queen on Instagram. But otherwise, just if you want to talk about any of these things, I'd be really happy to chat to you.
Amazing.
Thank you,
This
Kat.
has been great.
Yes, and so I've learned so much.
Yeah.
So much.
It's been so fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this week's conversation. We hope you gleaned as much from it as we did.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with all of our episodes at the Magnify Conversations.
And if you have a story to share and would like to be featured on the conversations, get in touch with Team Magnify through magnifycollective.com and head over to our contact form.
We'll see you next Monday for another installment from all of our team and crew. See you next week.